It is CFL Power Rankings time going into the last week of the regular season. Coming in at number 9, they have basically clinched this spot. I don't think I would move them out of 9 if they scored 100 against Saskatchewan this week. It is the Calgary Stampeders. Just an utterly embarrassing and abysmal performance against their former quarterback in Bo Levi Mitchell last weekend, and it just caps off what has been a horrendous season out in Calgary. And I think it is very telling when all they had left to play for was pride, and that's how they showed it. Just an awful, dreadful, terrible, no good game from the Calgary Stampeders, and very deserving of being in 9th place in the CFL Power Rankings. There are probably some U Sports teams that should be ahead of them. At number 8, it is the Ottawa Redblacks. The wheels have fallen off in a big-time way out in Ottawa, and that is, I think, very concerning heading into the postseason. And one of the things we have talked about on this show and in my 3 Down Nation piece is that this is a team that has struggled against playoff caliber teams. I believe this is now 3-7-1 against teams that are going to the postseason in the Canadian Football League. Simply not good enough when they are looking to make a push. Again, I think they have set themselves up very well for the future, but I do also think that maybe there is a touch longer to go than they would have initially thought. At 7, it is the Edmonton Elks. Kind of came crashing back down to earth a couple of weeks ago following a loss to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, but still seems like there is, again, some hope for the future. At 6, it's the Hamilton Tiger Cats. A awful start to the season has really set them back and put them in a position now where they are out of the playoffs. If they could have a couple of bounces go their way in the early part of the year, and this team is going into the postseason at the right time. But Bo Levi Mitchell puts a stamp on what could be the East nominee for most outstanding player. And a lot of people are just locking it into Brady Oliveira, and that's probably not incorrect, given how well Oliveira has played for the best team in the league. And if it was MVP, it would be a lock. But Bo Levi Mitchell, I think, given the O in MOP for outstanding, I think he should be a guy that gets maybe a little bit more consideration than he is getting right now. But Hamilton playing some pretty good football. At 5, it's Montreal. They have fallen into the trap that they took advantage of a year ago, where they kind of caught Toronto napping and were able to come up with a big performance in the East Final en route to a Grey Cup. Now, Montreal hasn't played a meaningful game in like 2 months, and they look like a team that hasn't played a meaningful game in 2 months. I would suspect they take this game seriously this week against Winnipeg, given that they have the bye going into the East Final. But I still think that this is... It's very difficult to flip that switch. And now I do also think that the last time the switch was flipped positively, there was still some thought that Philpott might be coming back. He's not. And that was such a dynamic part of this offense in Montreal this year. And it just hasn't been able to get back since. And we will see what they can do here in the final week of the season. At 4, it's the BC Lions, as they, I think, put a bit of a scare in the rest of the Canadian Football League with Vernon Adams having a big performance over the weekend. He feels like he's going to be the guy that can lead this team back to the postseason and put a real threat now on either Saskatchewan or Winnipeg, and probably both, as they get ready for the West semifinal in a couple of weeks. At 3, it is the Toronto Argonauts. Again, speaking of peaking at the right time, yes, things got a little bit sideways at the end, and Ottawa made that game closer than it actually was, but make no mistake about it, Toronto is playing some very good football right now, and they are not a team I would want to be messing with as we head into the East playoffs. At 2, it's Saskatchewan, because I am a little biased, but also that this is a team that has started to put a lot together. I still think there is an explosive nature to this offense that could be unlocked a little bit more, and I do think that there is a predictability in the play calling at times, but I also think that this is a team that is defending like just absolute, like a dominant unit right now, and creating a lot of turnovers and creating a lot of pressure and rallying to the football in real exciting ways. And so I think this defense is legitimate, and I think this team right now is legitimate. They have an outside shot of hosting the West Final coming up in a couple of weeks. But number 1 right now, the team who would be hosting the West Final, if the standings stay the same, that is the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. They have such a great combination of an offense that has found its explosiveness offense and a defense that has been dominant all season long. They look like the most complete team in the Canadian Football League, and they've played like it for the better part of 3 months now. And so we are in a familiar spot heading into the postseason with Winnipeg feeling like the favorites. So those are your CFL Power Rankings for the week.